Make sure you keep with us on our social media platforms. Joram, how are you doing?
I'm okay.
How was your Easter? Do they still say Happy Easter though?
No, I believe
When it comes to Easter Monday.
It's still Easter, by the way. So it is still right for someone to wish the others a happy Easter.
All right then. And Joram here is well and healthy, like I can see. I don't know how true that is, but we're going to take a look at what is happening across the borders away from Uganda, and also how they're making sure they make business and what do we learn from them. And we will start with China, where it is unlikely to achieve the GDP targets as COVID-19 crisis actually worsens around their country. Chinese zero COVID policy and its high hands is handling in the COVID-19 crisis, causing hiccups in the supply chains. Now delays at the ports, including lockdown crisis in Shanghai, which in turn is posing a grave threat to the country's economy, especially when it comes to Beijing's GDP targets. But China, the world's second largest economy, was already witnessing a slump in the later half of the last year, and this has gained again. The growth seems to be actually a bleak. And with the property market slump, regulatory crackdowns last year, the policymakers were setting to have low annual GDP target for China in the decades of 2020. That was reported by Chinese media. And according to analysts speaking at the French-based media, they were figuring out a 5.5 PC that would be hard to achieve, and to stay at home as a strict lockdown orders were being very productive and stunting consumer spending in the key cities around Shanghai. International Finance was highlighting how the Chinese economy saw a good start in January, February with the fewer energy constraints, domestic demand recovery, as well as physical stimulus. The rising COVID cases in March and restrictions by the Chinese authority have severely disrupted supply chains and industrial activities. Whatsoever gains were made earlier last year are said to be reversed as per this year. And as we highlight and conclude on this one, with many sectors facing a brunt of China COVID measures, crackers this week warned for severe disruptions to supply chains, as well as possibly even halting production completely if a lockdown in business hub in Shanghai continues. We're speaking about how China, especially in the cities or in the area or province of Shanghai, is actually halting down businesses and highlighting a drop of 5.0 percentage when it comes to their GDP. A number of people here are actually being affected. And some, though they believe in Buddha, others have got, their Chinese religions, but there are those who do believe in Jesus Christ as their Savior. And for this particular time, they spent the Easter holidays actually indoors because they had to obey restrictions around COVID-19. But away from that, a number of businesses actually have also seen their closure. People are working from home, and when they return, we were seeing reports how they were actually wanting more salary increment. At some point, you realize that the situation is not just happening at your store, but can you now consider about the company that you're not going to work, you're not attending to work actually every day physically, but then you continue to demand at least an increment. So I pray with people of China, especially in Shanghai. I pray you get through this very easily and quickly.
And I think it's reason being the Chinese are still facing COVID, which has created a very huge challenge for them to live in such hard times. But regardless of the fact, the Chinese government is still looking forward to make sure that they mitigate the effects of COVID-19 in their economy. But as of now, as we can definitely see, it is unlikely to achieve their GDP target for this financial year. Well, still with the SMB across borders, we head to Ghana as the Ghanaian government has launched a behavior change campaign to mitigate flooding effects. As the government launched a social behavior change campaign to mitigate flooding, Benson, covering a significant section of the Greater Accra metropolitan area. It is under a solid waste and flood risk management project called the Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development Project, aimed at addressing flooding in the national capital. Francis Asenso Boche, the Minister of Works and Housing Ministry, said that the campaign would involve series of activities in communities, which also include basic schools, market centers, religious centers, and lorry terminals along the Odo catchment areas. He said this during the launch of the project, which would be implemented by the Ministries of Works and Housing, Sanitation and Water Resources, and local government, which is also taking part in decentralization and rural development. The minister said it was part of the government's flood mitigation measures and that a contract for performance-based dredging of the Odo River Basin under the Garid project would be signed in the upcoming weeks. The minister charged the assemblies to sanction violators of sanitation bylaws and building regulations without fear or favor. Nite Ajebeng II, who is the chief of Adabraka, urged the public to make sanitation and cleanliness a priority, adding that citizens must be disciplined in managing their waste or in waste management. The Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development is a Government of Ghana project which is financed from a World Bank credit facility, and it is being implemented in 17 metropolitan and municipal assemblies in Accra by 3 ministries with support from the coordinating unit of the various projects in Ghana. So Ghana is looking at how they can clearly mitigate the flooding effects in their countries, and as well as saying that
behavior change campaign.
Yes,
that's a unique approach.
Yes, clearly how people, I think it goes back to how people handle themselves and how they respond to the environmental changes.
I see it's a very unique campaign or move. If you're to look at what is happening across the globe, you realize a number of people have got different perceptions, have got attitude towards something. But I see Ghana here is trying to change the way how the people think towards environmental management. I don't know how that would work around here. But behavior, what do you think could actually change people? When you're speaking Jorampo to people and you're telling them we need to change our environmental management system because we've got a lot of flooding, you've been littering here, you've been pouring a lot of maybe unwanted wastes, because there's things that are unwanted in the West. I'm speaking in the drainage system language. There's a drainage here, and then you are actually disposing of things that are unwanted at that particular time in that drainage system. What kind of language do you think citizens would understand? If you were government or if you were any organizations trying to implement a behavior change among citizens?
I think most of the citizens may understand more of when a government takes action in most of the cases, because what we do know is that the implementation of most of the policies in Uganda, not only in Uganda, by the way, on the African continent, is that most people tend to actually just look at the cover instead of even opening inside. So case in point, if you look at what is coming in from climate change, some people tend to only take good note of what the government is calling upon, unless when the government enforces these things. So I think the behavioral change in any way of mitigating the flooding will be the government going in communities to sensitize these masses on how they are going to be, which economic activities can they do, which settlement areas can they at least set up houses, because some of these particular settlement areas are catchment areas for the rivers and the lakes. And so those are some of the things that the government is actually looking at.
So you're saying it should provide something before
it may not provide literally, but it may give, the provision may come in the sensitization of going on ground. That is why here you see the government of Ghana is looking at going into religious communities. That means it's going to churches, mosques, and other areas of religion, and as well as going to the different communities and also going to schools to make sure that they keep on sensitizing these people, all these Ghanaians.
Very well. And away from Ghana, let me take you to what is happening in the United States, where Twitter board takes action to fight mask beat. Now, Twitter's board has aimed at against the possible hostile takeover a day after billionaire Elon Musk made around 43 billion US dollars, that's around 33 billion euros, offer to buy the platform. It has actually adopted what is called limited duration shareholder rights plan, and also known as a poison pill. This is actually funny when you look at the terms that are being highlighted here. The move will be preventing anyone from having more than 15% stake in the company, and it does this to be allowing others to buy additional shares at a discount. The Twitter board detailed its defense plan to the US Secretary's Exchange Commission and put out a statement saying it needed this because of Musk's unshortlisted non-bidding proposal to acquire Twitter. A takeover bid is considered as hostile when the company tries to acquire another against the wishes of the other company's management. In Twitter's case, it is the executive board around this particular scenario. And Musk announced a 9.2% stake in the company earlier on this month, but he is not the largest stakeholder anymore, according to the decisions that are currently being considered. And the asset management firm disclosed that how the funds were now rating around a 10.3 stake. And Musk said he believes Twitter is limiting freedom of speech on the platforms, and he reiterated this as the Vancouver event. He also said the primary motivation would be expanding for free speech around the platform as a US constitutional right, says, highlighting on Twitter. Musk is being advised by the US investment bank Morgan Stanley. Meanwhile, Twitter is being helped by the two banks, that is Goldman Sachs as well as JP Morgan, according to reports coming from Bloomberg. So we are highlighting how a company grows, and then stakeholders, this is a lesson to learn. If you're coming to buy stocks in a company, what limitations do you actually have to limit yourself from? But I'm not blaming, in this case, I'm not blaming Musk here. Because, I mean, if there were no provisions at first, that this is the limitation of buying a stock around that particular situation, or owning a company to this capacity to allow other people, to join. So this is just coming up. That means it wasn't there at first from the agreements. I don't know how you react to this particular scenario that is happening, because he wanted to buy Twitter because he felt like, okay, where I have reached, I can afford actually to buy the platform. But how do the other stakeholders or the other shareholders actually benefit from this?
Well, currently he has more shares with 9.2, surprisingly, for the biggest shareholder to have 9.2, which shows you that the entire company or the entire platform has got a number of shareholders. And now the reason as to why most of them don't want him to buy the entire shares is because he will have the right to actually fire even the board directors, and he will be having
he will be
all the right.
dictating.
Yes, he will be dictating, and still, because he says on one of his recent tweets, he believes that Twitter has got a lot of potential, and he came out and actually revealed that he feels he knows how to do it,
to handle it,
and to bring out that quality or to bring out that potential. That
is it about speech? speech, because he's talking more about freedom of speech, giving a
Because he
timeline,
says, yes.
a timeline of speech. We've got
He said there are some
incidences of
Twitter
not
rules that are
editing.
supposed to, yes, exactly. Some Twitter rules that are supposed to actually change. There was a time he actually proposed that he wanted to remove the W in Twitter. So, and people were like, how can it become Tita? So,
in that particular case in point has got to happen that way. But what lesson